Hello everybody, welcome back to Future Fiber. This is a channel where I talk about all the crafty things I do, but it's mostly knitting at this point. Today we have a special video brought to you by our friends at Hobbii. So the team at Hobbii kind of reached out to me and they said, we're gonna send you some yarn if you want to review them. And I was like, okay. So I selected 3 yarns to try from them, and while the yarn has been gifted to me, all of the opinions are of my own, so you're going to get a very honest review of what I think about these yarns, and they're mostly positive, spoiler alert. I knew about Hobbii from all of the other YouTubers that have talked about them in the past, but if you don't know about them, let me give you a quick rundown of what they're all about. They're a Copenhagen-based company, and they mostly are an online yarn retailer, and they have a really wide range of selection. They have different fiber types, all the way from natural fibers like wool and alpaca to more affordable options like acrylic, as well as a really wide variety of colors. They also have a variety of patterns that you could access for free, or you could sign up for their Hobie Plus program and get even more access to paid patterns. Another thing that you can do with Hobbii is shop online on their website, or you can go on their app, which they also have a fun program called the Hobbii Bingo, which you can play for prizes. So as part of my order, I guess, the team at Hobbii also sent over this bag with a yarn lady hat. But let's get into the different yarns that I picked out. So as I said, I picked out 3 different yarns. All of these yarns turned out to be some sort of wool blend, but you're gonna get to see a different variety of yarn weights and how I plan to use them in my future projects. So hopefully that's helpful to you. The first yarn that I'll start with is this yarn, the Friends Wool from Hobbii. And this is 100% wool yarn. It is designed to be knit up in 4 to 4.5 millimeter needles, so that's US 6 to 7, and they come in 50-gram balls like this, and each ball has 100 meters or 109 yards. So first of all, the color. I feel like this kind of bright blue color is really in and trendy nowadays. I've seen so many people knit up different tees and sweaters with this color over the past couple of weeks. So I've been really inspired to make something with this kind of color. And I was really pleased to see that this particular yarn line had a crazy selection of colors. There are a bunch of, basics like neutrals, like creams, beige, black, gray. But I feel like their color is really what I was drawn to. So the color I chose for this Friends Wool is 85 Sapphire, and I feel like it's a pretty befitting name. It's a really bright kind of cobalty blue, and what I plan to make with this is a cardigan. You might think 100% wool for the summer, isn't that kind of weird? But you will see with the swatch what I plan to do. So this is my swatch, and you can see how I knit up the Friends Wool in garter over here, and then I used a different yarn that I had kicking around in my house to do the white eyelets, so that you get this like punchy contrast of like very summery looking colors, in my opinion. And this is going to turn into kind of like a more fitted, structured cardigan, and I feel like the Friends Wool lends itself really well to that. In terms of feel, I feel like this isn't the softest wool. It's not superwash, so it's never going to be like baby buttery soft, but I feel like it isn't really hairy, so it doesn't bother me in a way that certain mohair types would. I personally don't find this very itchy, but if you are sensitive, I would keep that in mind. Maybe this would be better as a jumper that you put on over other clothes versus just laying it directly against your skin. But for me personally, I'm not very sensitive, so I feel like this lends itself pretty well to next to skin garments for me. So I'm really excited to use this, and I got 5 balls of this, and combined with that other contrast color of white, I feel like I'm going to be able to get a pretty good sized cardigan out of it, which is very exciting. As far as the weight that is suggested on the yarn, it's supposed to be, it was marketed as like kind of like worsted weight. And I would say that's pretty true. I hit the gauge that was listed on the label pretty accurately, which is 18 stitches by 24 rows. As far as how it knit up, I felt like it knit up really well. I feel like with certain wools, and especially when I'm using metal needles with them, they have a tendency to like catch on the tip of my needles a little bit. I didn't really find that to be the case, and it was just, you know, it was really pleasant to knit with because it also has this like springy quality to it that, you know, most wools have, but I felt like it was really additive to the overall knitting experience. So yeah, definitely excited to try and figure out what to do with other colors of this. And this Friends wool currently retails for $5 a ball. Really excited to have another affordable wool option. So that's the first thing that I picked out. The next one is going to be a little bit different. This yarn is a basically 50-50 wool and acrylic blend. And this is the Winter Glow from Hobie in the colorway 28. It comes in this giant, it's like, okay, well, my head is pretty big, so this is like about as big as my head. This Winter Glow is 51% wool, 59% acrylic, and it comes at about 700 meters or 765 yards. You would definitely be able to get some sort of top out of this, which is very exciting. The recommended needle size is 5mm, and the intended gauge is supposed to be 18 stitches by 24 rows. I actually made 2 gauge swatches. One was at the recommended needle size, and that's this one. This gauge is pretty see-through. You can't really see my face through it, but the stitches have a lot of room in between so that I don't know if you can see that, but it has a slight fuzz halo to the yarn, which I feel like the name is pretty befitting, Winter Glow. It does have a little bit of a glow to the yarn. And I made a second swatch after I made this one at recommended needle size, and this was at 4.5mm needles. There's not a huge difference, but you can see that this swatch is a little bit denser. But I feel like depending on how see-through or airy you like your garments to be, I feel like you could also drop down to a 4 and it wouldn't be too like stiff, because this swatch still has a pretty good drape to it, and I feel like you could drop down one more if you wanted a very dense fabric. These are both washed, and I didn't notice any major gauge changes after washing and blocking. And I really like the way that the fiber kind of blooms and the type of fabric it makes, because I feel like it is very airy, and I think it could lend itself really well to like a transitional weather outerwear, like a cardigan, or even like a shawl. I know a lot of people make shawls with this particular yarn, but for me personally, I think I'm going to make another wrap cardigan. I know I just wrapped up. I know I just finished knitting a wrap cardigan, but I want to make maybe the ballerina wrap top by Two of Wands with this. Or I was also thinking, I know Knitting for Olive also has a wrap cardigan that's saddle shoulder in design up here. So I think those are two, fun options for you to try. I think with this, I might even knit the cardigan with a larger needle than 5, so like maybe a 5.5, so that you could have even more airiness in the fabric. And since it's designed to be kind of like transitional, well, in my case, I would want it to be a transitional piece. So like having the fiber or the fabric be kind of open and kind of see-through, like almost netting, would be kind of cool, especially with this yarn. I will say that the fiber content, well, it has like 2% more wool than acrylic, but you can still kind of feel the acrylic in the yarn itself. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily in a bad way. When I was knitting it up, I didn't really feel like it had a bad hand to the yarn. But if you look at it in certain lights, I don't know if I'm going to be able to capture that at all. It looks pretty matte on camera, but if you shine this against a backlight, you can almost see kind of a shine to the yarn a little bit, which I think is can be kind of characteristic for certain acrylic fiber yarns. So if you don't like that, this might not be the one for you, but I personally don't mind it because also you can toss this in the wash. And a girly is tired of hand washing sweaters. And especially if I'm going to knit this as a transitional piece, I'm gonna be maybe sweating. So I would love to be able to, have another cardigan outerwear of some sort that I can just toss in the wash and not have to worry about it shrinking on me. So that's what I'm going to be using this Hobie Winter Glow yarn for. I really like the color. It reminds me of like salami and moss. I'm so sorry, but like it's in a good way, you know what I mean? I hope that came across. Maybe I'll cut that out. I don't know. This Winter Glow yarn retails for $31 per ball, which I feel like for the quantity of yarn that you get, I feel like it's pretty reasonable. And how it feels on my neck and stuff, once again, this is not really the softest yarn that I've ever tried, but I feel like it doesn't really bother me. With a lot of fuzzy yarns, I feel like it can get a little bit of weird feeling, especially if it's like close in your neck area. But for me, this, despite it being a pretty like fuzzy halo-y yarn, it doesn't really feel that offensive next to my skin. And I've kind of like, put it around my neck for a little bit of an extended period of time, and I didn't really feel like it bothered me. Take this as one data point. I feel like people tend to feel pretty differently about different fibers, so I would take that into consideration. Okay, and the last yarn that I have to show today is one of their sock yarns, and I'm really excited about this one. I already started on the sock because I was so enamored with the yarn. And this sock yarn is the Dolce Sock wool. It's 75% superwash wool and 25% polyamide. And this is 100 grams of sock yarn. And in each ball, you get 420 meters or 459 yards. And the recommended needle size, this is sock yarn, so the recommended needle size is from 2 to 3 millimeters. The color I got is 02. It's just kind of speckly. This is also the dots line, so you can see that throughout the ball you get these like little speckles of blue. But against that is this kind of ombre of blue. And I got this because I wanted to try a self-patterning sock. I've been knitting a lot of socks that were either, plain colored or had some kind of hand-dyed yarn, so I couldn't tell what the final result was going to really look like. But what I also liked about this sock was that it has, on the label, you get a little preview of what your sock is going to look like, which I think is pretty cute. So I'm excited to knit this guy up. I feel like the pattern is pretty subtle. I feel like the pattern is subtle enough where you could do some kind of more fancy socks, with like different ribbing or stitch patterns. I wouldn't maybe necessarily do lace because you would the little flecks might get kind of lost, but I opted to do a regular vanilla sock because I just wanted to see how the little dots would get dispersed throughout the fabric of the sock. And I think I made the right choice. I really like this yarn. The yarn isn't as soft as some superwash sock yarns that I've used in the past, but I actually think this is to its benefit because it feels more like, it feels like the wool will last a little bit longer maybe, Once again, I'm not really sensitive when it comes to things that are like kind of next to skin. I feel like I don't get bothered by a lot of things. So if you can't really have kind of harder wools next to your feet, then I would maybe take that into consideration. But the wool also softens up a lot once you wash it. So I've kind of blocked, I've kind of wet blocked the bottom of the sock here, and then that's why you see this line going through, and then the top is unblocked. And once you block it, you kind of get a little bit of, oh, you can't really see it. You get a very low pile of halo around the sock, which I think is also pretty nice. Yeah, I'm really not much else to say. I think this is a really good basic sock yarn if you're in the market for some other sock yarns. And then let me just tell you how much it retails for. So this Dolce Sock wool dots normally retails for $19.60, but currently at the time of filming, the yarn is retailing at $13.10. Okay, and that's everything that I got. Hopefully you found this video somewhat useful, and thanks to the team at Hobie for sending these yarns over so that I can give them a try, and I'm excited to actually get started on the projects that I've planned. I feel like the choices that I made maybe weren't as interesting as they could have been, but I also wanted to make sure that I got things that I knew that I would actually use kind of in the near future. So I hope I was able to kind of, give you a look into what Hobie's offerings were and how you could use some of those yarns in future projects. So with all of that in mind, I will see you guys in the next video, and I hope you have a good day wherever you are. Okay, bye!